Have you ever stopped reaching out to a woman and wondered what happens in her mind? The silence isn't just passive, it's a psychological game changer. When you pull away, it's not just about you disappearing from her life for a bit. It triggers deep emotions, challenges her sense of security, and forces her to confront feelings she wasn't prepared for. Her ego starts to unravel. She becomes emotionally unsettled, and soon she's questioning everything she thought she knew about you. In this video, I'm going to break down the exact response you can expect when you go silent and explain why this tactic is one of the most powerful moves you can make in any relationship. This isn't just about playing games. It's about understanding the psychology behind the silence and using it to your advantage. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see how strategic silence can change the entire course of your interactions and give you the upper hand. 1. She feels confused at first. When you stop reaching out to her, the first thing she'll likely feel is confusion. She's been accustomed to your messages, calls, or even your presence, even if her responses weren't always as enthusiastic. Deep down, she found comfort in knowing you were there, even if it was just on the other end of a text. But when that stops suddenly, it leaves her in a state of uncertainty. At first, she might brush it off. Maybe she thinks, "He's just busy," or "He'll get back to me soon." But as time passes and your silence continues, her initial sense of security starts to unravel. She'll begin to wonder, why hasn't he reached out? Did I say something wrong? Has he lost interest in me? That confusion creeps in as the rhythm of your communication is disrupted. Humans thrive on patterns, and when something predictable shifts, we start to question everything. Your absence creates a void in her daily life, and her mind fills that void with endless questions. And the kicker? That confusion isn't just about you, it's about her. She starts to question why she no longer has the control over the situation she once had. The more you stay silent, the more her mind races, and the harder it becomes for her to ignore the gap you've created. She might find herself checking her phone more often, hoping to see a message from you, or replaying past conversations, analyzing every word to figure out what went wrong. The longer you keep your distance, the more that initial confusion morphs into an obsession, something she can't shake off. And here's the most powerful part. None of this requires you to do anything. Your silence is enough to trigger this emotional storm. This confusion is the first crack in her ego, and it opens the door to everything else that follows. 2. She begins to question her own behavior. As the confusion deepens, it naturally leads her to self-reflection. This is the moment when she begins to turn the focus inward and start questioning her own actions and how they may have contributed to your silence. At first, she may resist this thought. Her ego will likely tell her, "He's overreacting," or "It's his loss." But as time goes on, those defenses begin to crumble. She starts to analyze the situation more critically, thinking back to specific moments. Did I ignore his messages too often? Was I dismissive the last time we spoke? Did I fail to show him the appreciation he deserved for putting in the effort? These questions don't just fade away, they persist, repeating in her mind like an endless loop. This kind of self-reflection is uncomfortable because it forces her to confront the possibility that she might have taken you for granted. She might have assumed that your attention and effort were always guaranteed, no matter how she behaved. But your decision to stop reaching out challenges that belief in a way she wasn't prepared for. What makes this stage so powerful is how it shifts the focus completely. Now she's not thinking about what you're doing or why you've gone silent. Instead, she's analyzing her own choices and actions. This isn't just about guilt, it's about awareness. For the first time, she might begin to realize that her own behavior played a role in pushing you away. This realization is both humbling and eye-opening. As she questions her actions, she starts to reevaluate her feelings toward you. What she once took for granted now holds greater value. This shift in perspective is what begins to stir feelings of regret and longing. Suddenly, she starts to miss you. This self-awareness paves the way for the next emotional wave she'll experience, setting the stage for even deeper introspection and emotional change. 3. She starts missing your presence. When you stop contacting her, the absence of your presence becomes more than just noticeable. It creates a void that she feels deeply. At first, she might brush it off, thinking it's just boredom or a shift in her routine. But over time, that feeling intensifies, and she begins to realize exactly what's missing. You. She starts to reflect on the little things, how you made her laugh, the thoughtful messages you used to send, the sense of comfort and support you provided. These weren't just casual gestures, they were emotional anchors that gave her a sense of connection. Without them, her days start to feel a little emptier, a little less meaningful. She may not even realize how much those interactions mattered until they're gone. This is where emotional contrast kicks in. She starts comparing her current life without you to what it was like when you were in the picture. Maybe she didn't always respond quickly or seemed indifferent to your calls, but now she's beginning to recognize the value in those moments. Your absence suddenly highlights your worth in a way your presence never did. What makes this stage so powerful is that it happens on its own. You're not doing anything to make her miss you. You're simply giving her the space to feel the impact of your absence. The longer you remain silent, the more she starts to focus on the positive memories you shared, the bond you created. This isn't just nostalgia, it's a real emotional connection that she begins to crave. As she starts to miss you, it keeps you front and center in her mind. The more she longs for your presence, the more likely she is to take action to close the distance you've created. This emotional shift is a powerful catalyst for re-establishing contact and sparking the next phase of her response. 4. She feels a growing fear of losing you. As your silence continues, her thoughts shift from mere curiosity to deep concern. She begins to wonder if your decision to stop contacting her is permanent. Has he moved on? Is he with someone else now? Has he completely forgotten about me? These questions aren't just the result of curiosity. They stem from a growing fear. The thought that you could be happy without her challenges her ego, forcing her to face the painful truth. Maybe she's no longer as important to you as she once thought. This realization doesn't just sting, it sparks a deep sense of urgency to find out what's going on. Her imagination starts to fill in the blanks. She may picture you going on dates, meeting new people, or simply thriving without her. These scenarios, though not grounded in reality, are born from her own insecurities. The more she dwells on these fears, the stronger her emotional pull toward reconnecting with you becomes. To ease her anxiety, she might begin searching for any signs that you've truly moved on. She could check your social media, ask mutual friends what you're up to, or even reread old messages, hoping to find clues she might have missed. These actions are driven by a desperate need to understand where she stands with you. The power of this stage lies in how your silence triggers these fears and actions on its own. You're not doing anything. Your absence is enough to make her question, to stir fear in her heart, and to make her realize that she might be losing you for good. This fear becomes an intense motivator, and soon she may be the one reaching out, trying to bridge the gap you've created. 5. She reaches out, seeking control. When the emotional weight of your absence becomes too overwhelming, she'll reach a breaking point, and that's when she decides to take action. This is the pivotal moment where she reaches out to you. But don't be fooled. Her message isn't just an attempt to reconnect. It's a move to regain control over the situation. She may send something casual like, "Hey, how have you been?" or "I saw something today that made me think of you." But behind these seemingly innocent words is a deeper motive. She's testing the waters to see if she still has any influence over you. How you respond to this moment is crucial. If you jump to reply too quickly or seem overly eager, you risk undoing all the progress you've made. But if you stay calm, composed, and confident, you maintain the dynamic you've carefully cultivated. Let her see that you're doing just fine, thriving even, but that you're not desperate for her attention. By keeping your cool, you reinforce that you're the one in control, and you set the tone for how things will unfold from here. This is where the power dynamic shifts. Your silence has already worked its magic. It's made her miss you, question her own actions, and reflect on the value you brought to her life. Now, her decision to reach out signals that your strategy is paying off. By maintaining control and not rushing to reconnect, you ensure that she begins to chase you. It's the ultimate reversal, where she's the one seeking to regain the connection, and you hold the reins. Sixth, her ego begins to crumble. When you stop trying to contact her, you're not just stepping back, you're subtly challenging her ego. Initially, her ego may protect her, convincing her that he's just busy, or he'll come running back, like he always does. But as time passes and your silence continues, those comforting reassurances start to fade. Her ego, which has been her strongest defense, begins to crack under the pressure of your absence. This process doesn't unfold overnight. It starts small, almost imperceptible. She might notice that your name no longer lights up her phone screen, or realize that meaningful exchanges with you have become rare or non-existent. At first, she might try to brush it off, but the silence becomes impossible to ignore as the days pass. Why hasn't he reached out? Is he moving on? Does he even care anymore? These thoughts chip away at her ego, which thrives on being seen as important, irreplaceable, and central to your world. What makes this stage so impactful is that it's entirely self-inflicted. You're not doing or saying anything to make her feel this way. Her own mind is creating the emotional turmoil. The more she reflects on your absence, the more she starts questioning her own control over the situation. This isn't just about you. It's about her sense of self-worth. Your silence forces her to face the uncomfortable possibility that she may not have as much power or influence over you as she once thought, and that realization hits hard. As her ego cracks, it creates a vulnerability she's unaccustomed to feeling. She may begin to miss the validation she once took for granted, or feel regret for not appreciating you more when you were still actively present. This vulnerability is significant because it opens the door to introspection and deeper emotional reflection. The longer you maintain your silence, the more those cracks in her ego deepen, making her more susceptible to re-evaluating her feelings and her behavior toward you. 7. She begins to compare you to everyone else. Once her ego begins to crack, she starts trying to fill the emptiness your absence has created by seeking comparisons. This is when she begins to evaluate everyone around her, whether consciously or unconsciously, against the standard you set. She might be spending time with other people, hanging out with friends, or even meeting new men, but no matter who she's with, a thought keeps creeping in. They're not him. This isn't just about missing you. It's about recognizing the unique qualities you brought into her life. Maybe you were a great listener, the person who made her laugh without even trying, or the one who truly understood her in ways no one else could. These qualities stand out even more in your absence, because she realizes they're hard to find. She begins to notice the ways others fall short, and that makes her value you even more. The emotional contrast becomes sharper the longer time passes without you. The small, meaningful gestures you used to make, like remembering her favorite coffee or sending thoughtful, random messages, become painfully absent. She starts to understand that not everyone will go out of their way to show care and consideration the way you did, and that realization is unsettling. It's a humbling truth she has to face. What makes this stage so powerful is that it reinforces your value without you having to do anything at all. By stepping back, you've created the space she needed to see what life is like without you, and that contrast only fuels the longing to have what she once took for granted. The more she compares, the clearer it becomes that you're irreplaceable. That understanding plants the seed of regret in her mind, making her more likely to take action and reach out to you. 8. She becomes obsessed with what you're thinking. As your silence drags on, one question begins to consume her mind. What is he thinking? This isn't a fleeting thought. It becomes an obsession. When you were actively reaching out, she had a clear understanding of where you stood. But now, with no communication from you, she's left in the dark, and that uncertainty is something she struggles to handle. Her mind starts to replay every interaction you had, searching for any clue about your feelings. Did you seem distant before you stopped contacting her? Were there signs you were pulling away? Did she miss a signal that could explain everything? These aren't just idle thoughts. They are emotional triggers that keep her locked in a cycle of overthinking. This stage often leads to her obsessively analyzing every little detail. She might check your social media profiles for clues about your life, or look back at old conversations, trying to decipher your tone or find hidden meanings. Every unanswered question becomes a puzzle she feels driven to solve, and the more she wonders what you're thinking, the deeper her emotional investment grows. The power of this stage lies in the fact that you're not doing anything to make her feel this way. Your silence is doing all the work. By not chasing her, by not providing any clarity, you're creating an air of mystery that keeps her intrigued and engaged. As her curiosity intensifies, so does her longing to reconnect with you. She's not just thinking about you, she's trying to understand you in ways she never did before, and that effort keeps you at the forefront of her mind. Walking away isn't the end, it's the beginning of regaining your power and creating space for her to reflect on her actions. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue the conversation. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.